Divine Renovation exists to inspire, connect, and equip priests and their parishes to go from maintenance to mission, for every Catholic parish to be a place where people can come and have their lives transformed by entering into relationship with Jesus. On today's podcast, Cathy Kennedy, the Evangelization Coordinator at St. Declan's Parish, joins us from Pennshurst, Australia. Cathy shares stories of people encountering Jesus and how a focus on the primacy of evangelization has changed her parish.
Hello and welcome to the Divine Renovation Podcast. I'm your host, Jacqueline Marie, and with me again today is President of Divine Renovation, Dan O'Rourke. Hello, Dan.
I could swear you stumbled a little bit on the president. It was like a president of Divine Renovation.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, it's your coffee. It doesn't have enough caffeine.
It's also because it's like that moment when you're already into something and there's no abandoning it. You're like, is that what I'm going to say? And with me today is the president. And then I was like, of what? Divine Renovation. Yes.
Yeah. You know, there's at some point, Father James Mallon and I, we've had a conversation many times about whether we produce a specific video series on assistance. So what do I mean? Well, for a lot of parish priests, a lot of them have assistants, either volunteer or paid, part-time or full-time. It comes in all different, flavors and stripes. And so of course, Father James Mallon has Anne-Marie as his assistant, Anne-Marie Syme, who we all love to death. She's an amazing woman. And, as someone, so I too, I have an assistant in my particular role, Jenna, who certainly pretty well, Jacqueline. And I think of the one of the things that when we talk about what's it like to have an assistant and as a priest, should you have an assistant? There's all sorts of questions packed into there, and it's certainly more than we can unpack in this conversation. But we've talked about unpacking at some point because, when you have someone like an assistant, I can certainly speak to my experience with Jenna. I'm like, she reminds me of the things I'm inclined to forget. So my assistant will absolutely, based on watching both my calendar and my energy levels, tell me it's time to stop working and I need to go and spend an hour in prayer. And then she'll put it in my calendar. She'll cancel meetings on me, put it in my calendar to make sure I'm going to go pray right now. And so
I love that.
And yeah, so do I. I mean, God bless her for it. And it's not that I don't pray with her, so I don't want to. I only pray when Jenna schedules it. No. But what I do know is, especially for those of us in ministry roles, setting aside that time can be challenging because the demands are so high, right? And so you feel like, but I could do X, Y, or Z. And that's why, at least in my case, having someone, force me to do a step back, say, no, Dan, you can't do X, Y, and Z unless you're doing it with God. And you look like you need to spend a little more time with God today. Man, it is a gift for me. It really is a gift when Jenna steps in and helps me in that way. And so I don't know what Father James, I suspect Anne-Marie works very differently with Father James Mallon than Jenna works with me. But I do know that she helps balance off some of his gaps and helps him be a better leader too.
And that total acceptance of we need others. That's what this is always coming back to, right? Is that we need others. And I love that today is the day that we're chatting with Cathy from St. Declan's, just because she has told me in the past things about how their team works and the way that has changed her. And also, as things grow, I was going to say you have to grow as leader. I guess you don't. I guess you could stay as you are. But if you want things to be fruitful, as your parish is growing, when you're going on mission and now you've got alphas growing and all these things growing, your leadership can't stay constant because nothing around you is constant. And I know that that's part of her journey too. So it's a perfect person to ask more from her experience from being in the trenches with us. Hello and welcome to the podcast, Cathy.
Oh, hi, Jacqueline. It's really great to be here. Thanks so much.
Right before we started recording, you were mentioning, heaven's going to be great. And I think the first time you and I chatted, that was something that we brought up was I might never get to meet in person a lot of the people that I've formed relationships with and heard stories through this job. But in heaven, I have so much catching up to do.
I know, it's going to be like a big DR love-in, right?
Yeah. Another conference, DR, but we're not going to say the year.
That's it.
I love it.
DR Infinity.
It's a party that just keeps on going.
That's right. I want to leap right in with your parish because St. Declan's is in a really great spot for us to hear stories from, because you guys aren't brand new to becoming, going from maintenance to mission to getting on this journey. So I'm really curious to ask you, what does evangelization look like in your parish? When we're talking about all these people that we're going to hang out with together in heaven, tell me about what evangelization looks like in St. Declan's and your role with that.
Okay, yeah, because my title is Evangelization Coordinator. And so evangelization looks like a lot of things. Like, to start off with, when I came here, was really just to pick up the baton with Alpha that had started and to keep rolling with it, and we managed to coax it through COVID and keep it alive, with all sorts of different things. But it's expanded so much then in terms of our evangelization really being about making every post a winner whenever there's an opportunity for a newcomer to come into contact with us, but also to be really building that culture of invitation. So, and it all, I think really still, it's very much about getting everyone to a place where they can really encounter God's love. And mostly that means Alpha, right? But we are really working hard on invitation. Our alphas keep going from strength to strength, which just kind of amazes me. This year, all of a sudden, I think everyone just decided that's it, COVID's done. And we went back to our pre-COVID numbers, and it was great for me. Like, I had to do a bit of a scramble. It's like I had to pull a few hosts out of retirement, things like that. But yeah, I think evangelization really now, when I look around, it's about every encounter that people are having, our parishioners, people who have come to life in God. They're speaking to people on the street, they're speaking to their friends, people are coming to us. In fact, I had my meeting with Father Chris yesterday, and one of the things that I was telling him about is that I'm crazy busy with new inquiries, adults coming, wanting either to find out about becoming a Christian, being baptized, or they're returning to faith after many years. In some cases, they haven't made any sacraments besides baptism, and it's just sort of, it's like this vortex of grace that's starting to happen around us now. It's like people are just coming out of the woodwork. I'm building a little team of people who can have threshold conversations now, because every one of those people we want to have a welcome conversation with, like, wow, it's really great that you've contacted us. It sounds like something really fantastic is going on in your life. We'd love to hear about that. Can you tell us what's been happening with you and God? And so just having that, and then from there, sort of tracing the moments of grace. Where is grace happening in their life? Speaking that into them, and then encouraging them onto their next steps. But that of course is happening because we have people who are now naturally talking about what's happening to them, talking about their parish, talking about the way they've come to life in God, or really just living a transformed life, and people are noticing, and word is getting out. So it's sort of going a bit crazy.
So Cathy, how long have you been in the role now?
Since 2019. So
you were pre-pandemic as well as through the pandemic, and then now you're post-pandemic.
Yeah.
So let's paint the picture. So you're the parish priest there is Father Chris Ryan.
That's right.
So he was one of the co-authors on the Preaching on Purpose book that Divine Renovation published, and so great book, great guy. So look, I just want to paint the picture of St. Declan's. You're where is St. Declan's in Sydney? Is it an urban parish, a suburban parish? Is it a rural parish? Roughly how many people sit there on a Sunday?
Sure. So it's a suburban parish. And before COVID, we were probably sitting, we reckon, at about 1,100 over our six masses on Sundays. And we're now sitting at that number again. So 1,100. We dropped down during COVID. Obviously, at times there was no one in the church. Sort of when we came out of COVID, we sort of, I guess, we're sitting at 700, maybe even a bit lower. And so it's really heartening to see how that's jumped back up.
And just for the record, because we have people who listen from all over the world, Australia was one of the places that was actually very, very locked down.
Very locked down. Yes.
Yeah. And so you would have, as a nation, you would have had a higher degree of restrictions on you than most places in the Western world, anyways. So look, so 2019. Give me a sense. How many people were showing up for Alpha then? And because you said you're back to those numbers already.
Yeah. So back in 2019, I think we probably hit our peak when we had about 130 people involved in Alpha. So that would include the team. So it's probably about 30 to 40 team, and the rest were guests, right? So, and that would be just on our Thursday night.
That's like 10% of your, that's like 10% of your overall Sunday attendance. Just to put that into context, because you're saying it's not that much. It's like, goodness me, for a parish that's got 1,100 or so flying through, to have 100 plus guests on your Alpha. I mean, that's extraordinary.
Yeah, it was pretty amazing, and we were kind of like, wow. And then of course that was Thursday night Alpha. We also have a Friday morning Alpha, which is we cater especially for mums at the school, parents who are at home, but also for senior citizens. And then we probably had 30 at that as well. So altogether probably about 150, and that's sort of kind of where we hit again this time. We probably had about 30 team, and I think we started with 100 guests, ended up with about 90. So, pretty good, we're pretty much right up there. And the difference though, here's the difference. Back then, a lot of the people were regular churchgoers. But at the moment, we're about to start an Alpha in 3 weeks. Of the 40 registrations we've got at this stage, and we expect that to exponentially grow, because it always does in the last few weeks. 62.5% of them are either sometimes, rarely, or never for church going. So we're pretty excited about that. Yeah.
And rightly so. So why do you think you're reaching people who are the sometimes or nevers right now? Like, what do you think's allowing St. Declan's to get those people who are not in the pews?
Yeah, so I think one thing that has probably really helped tip that a little bit is that we've started a Mandarin Alpha table. So they're still part of our Alpha. Like, we all have a meal together, we do the joke together, we do all sorts of stuff. But then our Mandarin table goes off to another room and watches the new Alpha videos in Mandarin, and then has their discussion there, right? Because we are surrounded by quite a few suburbs here, which it has a really high percentage of Mandarin speakers. And we've always had a heart to want to reach them. And we thought, actually, we were sort of praying and we thought actually that we'd try and start to do something in the second half of this year. But at the beginning of this year, as I was taking registrations, I kept getting inquiries about Mandarin. To the point where I remember I was sitting, we have a lovely scenic place nearby with a beautiful view over the river. And I'm sitting there one day looking out, and I said, Lord, if you want us to start Mandarin Alpha earlier, well, the answer is yes. And then so I went to Father Chris and said, look, what if we just did a table? What if we did And so he said, yeah, sure. Okay, let's do it. And then we had a couple of Mandarin speakers who had just done Alpha, and there's a beautiful story that I'd love to share more with you a little later. But this one particular woman threw it on, what do you call it? WeChat.
Okay.
And we had like 14 people on that table in no time, So, and I have to be honest with you, some of them were interested because they want to get their kids into Catholic schools. But the amazing thing is what's happening with them now is that something's changing in them. They're now coming back on team. Their kids are being prepared for baptism. They're on their way. We're going to have a whole bunch of catechumens soon. We'll have a rite of acceptance, probably at the end of this next Alpha, and they'll be coming. So that's part of it. But as for the rest, I don't know. I've been reflecting on this with Chris. I'm not really sure. As I said, I think people are talking more. Word is getting out about.
You said there was a vortex of grace, a term I loved, by the way. It's a vortex of grace.
And I think there's a couple of reasons for that. I think a vortex of grace happens when you've got more and more people serving in the parish in their areas of gifting, so that every post becomes a winner, right? So I think there's a bit of that happening. But I also think, I've been reflecting on the parable of the talents, and I wonder whether, because, maybe we only got 2 talents, but we've been trying to be really faithful to those 2 talents and produce something. Now I feel like God's saying, okay, we'll give him some more. And we go, okay, we can do that. Come, Holy Spirit. So yeah, we're scrambling. We're pulling together things. We're going to change the iteration of how we're doing RCIA. We're now working on Mandarin formation. And also stuff, but it's great problems to have, right? Absolutely great.
Gosh. Absolutely.
I love that you say great problems to have, because I'm really curious about the challenges, and not in a negative way, but what are the challenges when you're dealing with this much fruitfulness, and how does that impact how you lead and your team?
Yeah, well, that's a great question, because the challenge really is that every single one of those people needs to be pastored and shepherded well, right? They need to be helped through, and it's a discernment process that they're going through, because for many of them, it's that really early days of conversion, and whether they're on their way to baptism, or whether they're on their way to becoming Catholic, if they were baptized in another denomination, or whether they were baptized as Catholics as young people, babies, and never really darkened the door of a church since. Each one of them, we want to help them. We don't want this to be a box ticking exercise, right? So that takes time, that takes careful care, and it's beyond me now. I can't look after all these people. I used to have a coffee with the odd person, and it's getting beyond that now. So it's about building a team. It's about finding, looking around me, and I've found some people with really great gifting in this area, and they're starting to move into that. We've graduated. Some of my best hosts are now going to become part of the RCIA team and help there. So, it's just about constantly looking and seeing where is the Holy Spirit providing? Where are the people with gifts that have those, those beautiful shepherding, pastoring, discerning kind of gifts to be able to continue to encourage. And the other thing, of course, is life groups, because it's just for new people, how important it is after the Alpha experience, going through the Alpha leadership pipeline, that we really want to get them then into a group. And my fellow SLT member Jackie is just doing an amazing job with getting life groups going, and we've just done a Connect series that's opened up a whole bunch of new life groups, and that's really making a difference too, because we're finding a landing place for these people, so that it's not just about me or even a team that I've got. Eventually, hopefully they're going to have friends in faith that are looking after them here in the parish. So yeah, we're having to work every front. We're pulling all the strings that we can everywhere,
Well, I think that's the way it often goes, right? And especially when you get the alpha pump going, right? And then all of a sudden you suddenly have capacity. I mean, your point is well made. It's like you have 130 alpha guests between the moms and the and your Thursday evening, right? Those are huge numbers. So you're not going to be able to build a personal relationship with every single one of those, Cathy. You don't have that kind of time on your hands. And so you need to build teams, right? And so Jacqueline and I, before you came on, Cathy, we were talking about that. How do you build teams? How do you unleash the gifts of the leaders around you? And it sounds like you are just kicking it when it comes to doing that well. When I think of what you've done, let me call out one thing. I love the way you innovated. First of all, you said, look, God, if you want us to do it, okay. It's how is it going to go? Don't know. But, I just love that surrender to what the Holy Spirit might be blessing, and your discernment of getting those phone calls and those questions. It was supposed to be the second half, but whatever, let's do it now. I want to honor your faithfulness in that. That's really cool.
Oh, thanks, Dan.
You teased me, Cathy, and I want to go back to the tease you gave me. You said, look, there's a story about this, and then you didn't give me the story. I want the story. Tell me a story.
Okay, I will tell the story. Thank you. Thank you. I can go down rabbit holes when I start talking, so it's really good to be brought back. So thanks, Dan. Yeah, there's a lovely lady called Je, Michelle in English, but Je is, she came to us, last year. I think it was probably the first Alpha last year, or possibly the one at the end of the year before. And she's a Mandarin speaker and didn't have a lot of English, but she came along. We couldn't even work out exactly how she'd come, but she came along. And for the first Alpha, she just sat there with her daughter, who was kind of translating a bit for her, didn't say a word. And, sort of wondering, oh, what's going on, trusting the process, all sorts of stuff. And I started to think, I think English is a real struggle for her. And, it dawned on me in about week 8 to put the English subtitles down the bottom of the Alpha videos. I got there in the end, it dawned on me to do that. And all of a sudden she started to come to life. And because she told me later, Cathy, before that I understood 10% of what I was watching. Wow. And when you put the translations up, I understood 30%. So, that she started to actually talk just a little bit and come to life. And then at the end of that, she came back for the next Alpha. Her daughter absolutely loved coming. She's 10 and she loved coming. And so we had a couple of other kids of team members and they just hang out together and have fun. And we just kept offering welcome. She watched the videos again with 30% that she could understand, and slowly coming more and more to life. And then I had a coffee with her, where you at, whatever, and she talked to me about how the Alpha and the people there and St. Declan's were like her family. Which was really beautiful. Just we were trying so hard to give her that welcome, and her daughter loved it so much as well. And it was just like family. And then over time, she kept working really hard on her English, and she really came to a beautiful place in Jesus. And she became a catechumen. She was baptized last Easter. She asked me to be her godmom. Which was really special. Yeah, so I'm her godmum, and she calls me Mama now, which is so lovely. And I even got a Mother's Day present from her, which is really sweet. But what's amazing is that she's our dynamo evangelizer for all Mandarin speakers. Like already, she's the one who kind of organized the Mandarin table. She's doing amazing things. Her love of Jesus and bringing people to Jesus is extraordinary. She's now part of the music ministry. She sings, and she's got a beautiful voice. And she works all week to get those English lyrics right every week to, get them right so she can sing. Her daughter's joined the little church band. And now we've got a bunch of Mandarin speakers whose kids are being prepped for baptism. And we told them that they needed to have a Catholic, godparent. And so they all went to her. And it's amazing. So now there's all these kids. But you know what she did? In typical amazing Jet fashion, she said, well, I can't be godparent to like 8 or 10 kids. So she farmed them out. She said, she knew the other team members of the Alpha team member. And she said, well, you can be godparents to these ones. You can be godparents to these ones. You can be godparents. So she's organized the whole thing. So she's going to be a godparent to a few, but each one of the Alpha Mandarin team members are going to be godparents to some of them. They're all coming along. So I'm now going to be what do you call that? A grandmother. Great godmother.
Yeah. I still, you told me a part of this story pretty recently, and I still have goosebumps when you tell this story, because there's something that's so miraculous about this spiritual lineage. Like you're talking about it, you're now the, spiritual grandmom, and all these situations where this woman, you said she just got baptized a year ago.
Yeah, that's right.
A year ago.
Yeah.
And you don't even know how she came to the parish? Like you said, you weren't quite sure how she found her way there?
Yeah. Well, at first she told us that she wanted to improve her English. But I think also she was keen to get her daughter into Catholic high school. I think she heard about it. I'm still not exactly sure how she heard about it, but she heard about it. She registered.
That's incredible, though. Like, Cathy, and this is one of the things that we as Catholics are blessed to have. We've got those interesting leverage points with the secular Catholics, right? You know what I mean? Like, you want to go to the Catholic high school. Oh, great! Like, come on into Alpha. You're looking to get married. Oh, great! Come on, check out Alpha. Like, we have those moments where people want to celebrate, what are moments in time that, as a church that we recognize and sacramentalize often, right, in terms of important moments. And those who are unbelievers still crave the ritual, even though they don't understand the underpinnings. But that for us is an evangelization opportunity. Like, her daughter, her 10-year-old wanting to go to school. I mean, like that to me is, it was an evangelization opportunity to be able to connect her into Alpha. And then all of a sudden, all of the spiritual fruit that comes from it. It's quite incredible.
It is. And Dan, it's because sometimes we can, I used to work for the Archdiocese and I helped with RCIA, and you can, talking to people who are running RCIA in parishes, you can get a bit cynical about people who just want their kids in a Catholic school and that's why they're choosing to be baptized and stuff. But, I think the thing is to recognize the positive intent in that, because we take the time to have conversations with them. Like when I spoke to Jet about that, she said to me, my daughter, I want all the best for her. And I want the positive messages. And, basically what she was talking about was that she saw community and virtue in a Catholic school, that whole, the goodness. And she wanted that for her daughter. How can you be cynical about that? That's the beginning. If we understand that God reveals himself to us through truth, beauty, and goodness, she's longing for that truth, beauty, and goodness for her daughter. She was already opening the door to God there, right? Yeah. She wants that for her daughter. Obviously, she wants that for herself and for everything. So I think, I don't think we need to be cynical. I think we can say, okay, here's a door. Let's open our welcome and our love and see what the Holy Spirit does.
Well, and like Dan, you're saying that, the deeper need is there because there's the surface of my child needs to go to school or I want to get married. And I think that's such a good example of how hard is it to say our deep need, right? Like if you're just going to go meet someone at a church you've never gone to, no one there, it happens, but it's pretty brave to just walk up and be like, my soul feels empty and I need, we don't say those things out loud, but we can say, I want a good place for my child to go to school where I think that there's something good. And it is that like crumb that reveals the bigger truth and longing that must have been there, right? For her to be pulled so deeply in. The longing was there, but you need relationship first, usually, before you can open up that longing.
That's right. There are brave people who will walk in the door, but a lot of the time it's going to be other things. And because we have these conversations, I've been speaking to some of these other mums now who clearly first came to us because they wanted their kids in high school. But when you hear their story, I went to the local playgroup at the Baptist church and I did this and that. Like they've been looking, they've been searching, they've been going to lots of different places. They want to know more about what this whole Christianity thing is. So this is, as you say, it is just part of a journey for them. Like they are searching and they are looking for something more. But yeah, it's hard to name it or scary to name it,
So Cathy, have I heard you right? I mean, like, so Alpha obviously is sort of the evangelization tool you guys have leaned into. It sounds like, though, that's not the only way that people are encountering Jesus there, that there's other ways that people are both finding their way in and finding themselves connected. Could you paint some of the other things? Like, so what are some of the other, either stories or examples you've got in terms of what's happening that's sort of motivating people to encounter Jesus there?
Sure. Well, I've just got a registration from a young man who's going to be joining this Alpha who came to church. He's one of a person who, comes to church at Easter and stuff. I think he came with his family. And it was a Good Friday, part of the Triduum. And something about it just really moved him. So it was actually the liturgy. It was the beauty of the liturgy that moved him. And he had the beginnings of a real conversion experience. Since then, he's been coming to church. And he really loves the preaching. We're very blessed with Father Chris and our other priests. The MGLs, Missionaries of God's Love, have quite a charism for good preaching. That's that's feeding him. That's been feeding him, and now he's coming to Alpha. So that was just him walking in the door on the liturgy. Other people are coming. And like, so we had a fellow in his family move from another state, come here back closer to family. It was actually the welcome at the school with the teachers and the principal and what we call our family educator, who's the link between the parish and the school, giving them such a beautiful welcome. Then coming to church, experiencing our coffee cart and our welcome. And they said, coming here is like getting a big warm hug. So that... Wow. You know, so the beginnings of stuff are happening there. And in fact, I had a chat with him. He needed a new job. I said, can we pray for you? Can we put it on our intercession ministry? His team, can we give it to them? He said, yes, please. And I ran into him yesterday down the street and he said, thank you for your prayers. I got a job 6 weeks ago. I've been there now for 6 weeks. I'm loving it. It's fantastic, you know. So, and then I said to him, well, you know, now you've got to come to Alpha. So yeah, things like that happening all the time. Also, just we've got an amazing worship leader. You would have seen her in action at the conference, Dan, Louisa Daniel. She helps do worship and is raising up worship leaders for our Sunday 6 p.m. Mass, which is probably just a little bit more worshipy in its flavour. And a lot of people are coming and being really moved by that, because that lends the opportunity for the priest to call people into not just that after the homily, like a little bit more of a response time, you know, and that's something that our priests are working on, is doing that, is sort of after their homily is then calling people into a little moment of response, a little moment of prayer. So those sorts of things are happening all over the place. I heard another parishioner who we don't see that often because she's immunocompromised, so she's still not always at church, but she was talking to a cousin and basically led her in committing her life to Jesus just during last week. And so she's just registered for Alpha. She lives in a different suburb, like quite some way away. So she's going to do her online Alpha. So this is what I mean. It's just crazy. It's happening everywhere.
Oh, it's a blessing of fruit. But you know, there's a bunch of things, like, you know, you talked about you talked about the music, which, you know, I've been blessed to experience the music at St. Declan's, and you know, the way worship music is celebrated there is beautiful. And you talked about the homilies. You know, it reminds me, it's the 3 H's that Father James, you know, speaks on and writes about. It's, you know, the hymns, homilies, and hospitality. Because, you know, even when you spoke about the beauty of the liturgy and the man who you know, has found his way back after that Good Friday service because of the beauty of the liturgy. I mean, and that feeling of that community being like a warm hug. I mean, like, you know, that's that hospitality. It looks like you guys are just so beautifully living out the 3 H's that if you're not catching them via Alpha, you're encountering them in another place. And here's the other thing I want to note, because I've heard you say it now a few times, is so even if you've caught them somewhere else, right? So even if they're a fish that's jumped in the boat from one other direction, not through your primary evangelization program, you're still inviting them to go over to the evangelization program. You're like, hey, yeah, you've met Jesus, come on over to Alpha, check this out.
Yeah, and you know, Dad, that's because Alpha works, but it's also because there's so many of them. That's really the only way that we can handle it. Like, we get them into Alpha, and then we know that's where we know we've got a system of care that's going to mean that they'll probably have it. You know what I mean? Like,
there's so many of them. Like, what the heck? Like, this is amazing. Like, praise God.
Don't you just in your head picture like boats of fish, like that whole, you know, with the apostles be like, oh no, now it's sinking. My ship is, or not my ship, my boat is sinking.
That's it. The net is tearing. So quick, get them into the Alpha boat. We know that's safe. You know.
Well, even better than just being safe, which it is, but even better than that, it's also where you get to form them in the culture of St. Declan's, right? Because so much of what you've said is like, you know, there's a culture there, obviously, that is being lived out, where the hospitality is being so rich, and where people are feeling drawn to that community, and so much of that begins at that shared experience of an evangelization program like Alpha, where obviously you've really done a phenomenal job of creating something that makes people feel like they're in a community and they want to stay in one, which is why your life groups are exploding. So you can see how one thing builds on another thing, builds on another thing, and then it just becomes this amazing ecosystem of fruit, which you guys are just in the middle of. Just, you know, it's a vortex. It's a vortex of grace.
I'm super curious, when you're talking about a cycle, how that affects you too. You know what I mean? Like, we're talking on the macro level with the parish, how that perpetuates teams and so that you can hold all these wonderful fish in, but also for yourself personally. What does it do to not just witness this, but be part of this?
Yeah, so there's two parts that I'd like to answer that. The first one is like, it blows my mind, and isn't it fun? I don't know. I hope that you're with me on this, guys. But even seeing all of what God is doing, I still find cause to doubt Him at some point every day, at least once. Yeah. So I have to just keep something. I think in the Psalm this morning, once again, somewhere, or was it yesterday, was saying, recall the wondrous deeds of the Lord, and I have to keep doing that. But to see what God is doing and to be some small part of that is just amazing and wonderful. And it reminds me of what I heard a priest say just recently. In the battle against good and evil, God doesn't just scrape in. God is, God's got this completely. Like, He's absolutely the victor. There is no competition, right? So and that helps me then in my own struggles, in my own spiritual life, in my own family life, in my own, everything, So it just builds my faith, which is really exciting. The other part of it is that I am always just this far away from feeling completely overwhelmed.
Oh, no.
But that's okay, because it also means that it's really been, you're talking about, wow, you're really kicking it with building teams and stuff. Dan, that's just an absolute essential. My instinct is not always to keep building people around me, is to try and do it all myself. This is really good because it's keeping me really honest to that. I have to keep building people up and letting people go, and just, I just have to, because otherwise... So there's this great word in German. It's called Überforderung, and apparently it's that kind of like that sense of really being stretched to your absolute limit in the way that only God can stretch you. I don't think that that's what Überforderung is, but I would say but there's something positive about being stretched more and more to your limits. I guess it's something to do with magnanimity, and in that, having to totally trust in the Lord constantly. There's always too many things to do on my list. Always. I never get to them all, but...
Yeah, so Cathy, before you came on, we talked about making sure that we weren't burnt out and stressed out. So I want to do a check-in here, a personal check-in. Are you at risk of burnout or stress out? Because if so, we're sending a team down to Australia and we're going to rescue you.
What are you going to do, like massages?
I like how we're saying we would send a team down to Australia to rescue you, when it'd be like the team would go down to Australia and just would say like, Cathy, look how fun this is. Let's just go do all these fun things. And that would be your rest. It would be them taking a vacation with you.
Yeah, Dan, look, absolutely. I've got to keep looking after myself and self-care and everything. But that being said, I think there is something about, when you're growing so exponentially that you just always, I think something about the Lord, He always provides, but sometimes not until the last moment. So you're like, oh, how's this going to work? Yeah. Oh, okay, it's working good. Thank you, Lord. Okay, Lord, what are you going to do here? Who do I need? So just always that. Like at the moment, I think I'm probably down one host that I'm going to need for this next alpha, but I'm not panicking about it. We'll find that person, and I'm not going to even try and find that person yet because I don't know what age group host I'm going to need yet.
I was just about to offer Jacqueline. I mean, I know she's never been to Australia. She's keen to go.
Any age group. I could be an any age group person.
Yep. She'll dress up appropriately. Like, gray-haired wig, no problem. Toddler's ball cap. I guess she could rock one. I don't know. All the spectrum.
Yeah, thanks, Jacqueline. It sounds like you're just the kind of, what do you call it? All round player that I need.
Exactly. Do you know what? I love what you're saying about how it's actually like a grace from God when it's too big for us to control, because when it's smaller, even though it's not up to us to control, it's easier to be like, oh, I can know all the tasks to check in my head. And I think I am controlling the outcome and those kind of things. And it is when it explodes, like you're saying, that there is no way for you to hold on tightly with both hands. Like the only way for you to do this is to open your hands up. And what a grace that is. I mean, maybe you're not a person that holds on tightly, but my instinct is like, how do we make this perfect? And how do you hold on tight?
Jacqueline, that is yours. It's like you've read my soul. Yeah, no, exactly. I do. I always want to hold on real tight. I want to have control of everything. And so I think it is actually absolutely a grace to be able to have to just keep letting go because it's too big.
So since 2019, you've been in the role since 2019. What have you experienced as sort of one of the biggest challenges of running Alpha there?
Ooh, biggest challenges. COVID was pretty tough. Just keeping it going. We went from. I remember the day when we had to stop our face-to-face Alpha, and I went to Chris to his office. I was so angry. I wasn't angry at anyone in particular. I was just angry, And then coming to accept that we're going to have to going online. Then for a long time doing online and some small groups face to face because we had for a long time only so many people could meet together in a room and stuff like that. So we were doing all sorts of creative things, so for that time, we kept it going. But it was constant innovation, constant thinking about that, just keeping it rolling, keeping it alive. And the team of people that kept working with me throughout that, all the volunteers, I will be forever grateful to them because it was a tough gig. But, we kept that meant that we did keep just that culture alive. We did have some really amazing people, like the person who is going to, I think, play a really instrumental role in RCIA into the future is a fellow who came to us and did his Alpha online and has been one of the best Alpha leaders I've ever had. So, it was hard, but, yeah. And the other challenge, can I have two? Catering. So because we don't have a funky, great, amazing kitchen, so we have to. We need to ask people to prepare meals and bring it in every time, and it's such a big ask. Hey, do you mind feeding 100 to 120 people?
Yeah.
Okay, just side note for everyone listening right now, if you just want to pray for St. Declan's to get some new facilities for their kitchen, that would be fantastic. Continue, Cathy. Or the Portuguese, because we have some amazing priests in Portugal who brag to me all the time about the food at their Alphas. And I'm like, you're not wrong. I know that you probably have the best food of any Alpha at any of our parishes. So if they just want to send their people your way and they can cook.
Uber Eats from Portugal to Sydney. Is that how that works?
Yeah, they're on a ship. Here we go.
So Cathy, one of the rules of thumb is that any church can't relate to a church that's beyond 2 stages beyond where they're at, right? And so listening to you, St. Declan's is clearly been on this journey for a while, and you're seeing the fruits of so much that's been built right over time. So the picture, the parish as it isn't what it would have been a handful of years ago and a handful of years before. This has been built over time, and for a lot of folks who might be listening, they'll be like, "Yeah, well, my parish would never be like that." And so because it just feels so distant. And so the rule of thumb is it can't. We have a hard time looking at anything beyond 2 phases. You'd be several phases. St. Declan's would be several phases beyond so many parishes. Some of whom are just thinking about starting their first Alpha.
Yeah.
But if I could get you, if I could challenge you to think about those parishes earlier on the journey, whether they're just about to start or whether they've just started, what would be a couple words of advice that you might give to them as they begin their journey towards mission?
Oh, yeah. I'm blessed to be able to talk to priests at Kickstart cohorts. So that's where priests are just starting out. And so just start Alpha and don't worry. If you get 10, 20 people, that's great. Be faithful to it. Keep building it. Build that culture of invitation. Invite. Really throw everything you can at it to make it welcoming. Don't kill yourself, though. Make the food simple, do that sort of stuff. But it's about the welcome and the hospitality. It's about really being aware of the newcomer. So start Alpha, and pump it for all you can get out of it in terms of changing culture and building up leaders. And then, lean into a senior leadership team, building that. Make sure you have those leaders that are continuing to grow and learning to be really intentional, so that one at a time you can start to think, all right, Lord, what's the next step? Do we need to start to have a good welcome at the front door of our church on Sundays? So who can we ask? And I guarantee you, after 5 or 6 alphas, you'll probably have a few alpha team people who would be, are great. They understand welcome. Get them to start a welcome ministry. So it doesn't have to all happen at once, and there's going to be years of just doing that tough stuff. But persevere. As I always say, you're going to be busy in parish life anyway, but so much better to be busy, being intentional, busy working towards something and building a new culture than just being busy kind of rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic.
Absolutely.
Is that being too
what
tight?
I hear you saying is just start, welcome people, then persevere and do it from a team. Do it with a team. That's so key. I'm so grateful that you came on today. I think that people are going to get a lot from what you're saying, and just so excited also to celebrate the fruit with you. So I want to thank you so much for joining us today on the podcast. And I hope you have a great rest of your Australian day as you're in the morning down there.
Yeah, I hope you guys have a really great sleep. It's been just wonderful chatting to you. It's just a delight all the time. I do look forward to the time in heaven when we can just have a DR party forever, recounting all the great things that God has done.